Okay. Raspberry Pi IPO Selling Out by Jeff Geerling. If you haven't checked out Jeff Geerling's stuff, by the way, his YouTube channel is really pretty good. I would highly recommend it. I'll leave a link to it in the description here. But let's read about Raspberry Pi. I think they were a nonprofit going with an IPO. So Raspberry Pi is looking into an IPO, initial public offering. Oh, that's the Bloomberg article. We'll go over there after we're done here. But wait, Raspberry Pi is a nonprofit. They can't do that? Yeah, I thought nonprofits couldn't have IPOs. And who would want to stock in Raspberry Pi anyway? Their core market hates them. They abandoned hobbyists and makers years ago. All right, I still buy them. I still like them. And there are tons of clones, competitors. Nobody even needs a Raspberry Pi. Plus, aren't they crazy expensive? It's like $100 now, and that's even if you can find one to buy. Well, hold on a second. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. In this post, I'll walk through actually what's happening, and also the things I see online. What actually happened today? So first off, what actually happened? Well, Edmund Upton, who's the CEO of Raspberry Pi, told Bloomberg that Raspberry Pis were planning an IPO when market for IPO reopens. They're talking to banks in the UK, not the US, and that's a sticking point. Apparently, markets haven't been as kind over in the UK for IPOs. Many companies, even ARM, another Cambridge-based company, chose to list their stock on the US market instead. I didn't realize ARM was Cambridge based. I thought they were US based. I thought their parent company SoftBank was a foreign company, but I thought ARM was US based. I'm very wrong on that apparently though. Um Eben said the markets in London are a good enough place that Raspberry Pi would be comfortable doing an IPO there. When that happens, Raspberry Pi's ownership would be split up in the stock market as earlier private investors like Sony, ARM, and even Raspberry Pi Foundation would get large chunks of it. So it's probably like the whole OpenAI nonprofit owning a for profit thing. Like the Raspberry Pi Foundation is probably the nonprofit, and then they're creating another entity underneath it. That kind of, I mean, just like OpenAI doing it, that smells a little bit. It doesn't seem quite right. But the main takeaway is being a publicly traded company creates different incentives. Much different incentives. Much different incentives. You have less control, and certain things you do are governed more by a board of directors or the public ownership at large. You can find yourself breaking a lot of laws, actually. I mean, the act of doing something that doesn't make you money breaks the law, at least in the US. I mean, if you're doing something that loses you money, you're breaking the law. You are required to make more money as a publicly traded company. I think that's one of the biggest problems with stocks is the companies are driven by this weird incentive structure to just keep making more and more and more. And sometimes that really makes them do dumb things that they know in the long term aren't going to be good. And the direction of the control of the company is less about small team of founders and more about profit. Yes, and you kind of lose sight of your core business demographic as well. So, now, do I think Raspberry Pis are going down the toilet? No, definitely not in the short term. And the IPO still might never happen. Okay. That's so it's announced they might do it. They're thinking about it, basically. Back in late 2021, there were rumors flying about an IPO, but that didn't pan out, and probably a good thing since Raspberry Pi had trouble even making their tiny single board computers for a few years. Yeah, they had supply chain issues along with everyone else, and they weren't big enough to really ride out that storm. But to be fair, neither was like Nvidia and AMD. Like Nvidia got hit hard there. They were making, they got hit hard. They couldn't keep product on the shelves, which is a really good problem to have. If you're selling everything and anything that you make, and it's just flying off the shelves, that's a good problem to have. So don't discount that. They weren't hurting at that point. They were having a good time. Back in late 2021. Oh yeah, we read that. But regardless, the fact the Raspberry Pi is turning more corporate means changes will happen one way or another. I think for many of us who followed along the first few years when the first Pi was hacked together and brand new, it's the death of that original ragtag idea that hurts. It's the same OpenAI story all over again. Right now, Eben Upton is still CEO, and in an interview with the Register, he even said, "We'll keep doing the same stuff, certainly while I'm in charge. I have no reason to believe he's lying." I think I think a lot of times the intentions are probably good. Pre IPO, I think the intentions are probably good, but what happens is then you get the lawyers involved, and then you, like I said, you have to make money. You're required to make money if you IPO, and that leads you to do some weird things. The Compute Module 5 is right around the corner, and they could probably knock out a really cool iteration of the Pi 400 if they just put in a Pi 5 and an NVMe slot, and maybe gave us a nicer keyboard. I can dream, can't I? I heard that keyboard was really bad. I liked the Pi 400 form factor, though. I didn't have one, but I really liked the idea of it. I need a Pi 5. I have a Pi 4 that I play with a broken. It's got a broken display slot on it, but I should get a Pi 5 to play with and see how good it is. Maybe I'll subscribe to the channel. Maybe I'll do a review of the Raspberry Pi 5 when I get one. But long term, will Eben's version for what makes Raspberry Pi change? Will there be turnover and some of the people who make the Pi a joy to use be gone? Will the software side start leaning on subscriptions to increase revenue and make shareholders happy? I could see that'd be that would be the day when Raspberry Pi starts charging subscriptions for their operating system. And I could see them doing it too, because if they did that, then they'd make money off of their competitors' boards. Like, because a lot of the competitors' boards still run Raspberry, and they could make a lot of money that way. And ultimately, could Eben be replaced, and would that change things? Yes, probably, but I won't speculate about any of that here. See my blog posts about poopification. I won't. We'll skip over that. Or for the last month, if you want to read more about that topic. What I will do is answer some misconceptions I've seen about Raspberry Pi and the IPO. Misconceptions. First of all, Raspberry Pi is not a nonprofit. Well, actually it is. And it isn't. Let me explain. Raspberry Pi Trading is a for-profit company in the UK that designs and manufactures all the hardware. And Raspberry Pi Foundation is a charity to help young people get into computing. If you visit their website, you'll see this mission is entirely different. Now, they are related. If you look at the foundation's governance, you'll see there are some of the same people too. Does that make the Pi Foundation shady? No. Debatable. I think if you're a nonprofit and you're in bed with a for-profit, I think, and you have the same brand, right? Like they're the same brand, like the for-profit and the nonprofit, to where people conflate the two. Like most people don't even know these are two separate companies. It's like OpenAI. Most people don't know that it's actually like 6 companies, by the way. But most people have no clue, and they just, as they well should, think they're the same company, which makes it kind of disingenuous to have a for-profit and a non-profit and then mash them together. So I think that's a little weird. They do a lot of great things. They do a lot of great things. One of my favorite is the Astro Pi challenge, where kids can get their code to run on a Pi in space. That's that one's definitely a neat one. But they are different entities, and they've been pretty much since the beginning. Does the foundation stand to profit from Raspberry Pi Trading's IPO? Probably. Absolutely, it does. I mean, almost 10 million pounds of their 2022 income came out of Raspberry Pi Trading's profits. Yep. That. Yep. Yep. Mozilla's the other one. I think that they're set up a similar way too, like a nonprofit owning a for-profit. Regardless, Raspberry Pi Trading, the for-profit wing, is the one that would be going public. Another thing I've heard is Raspberry Pi is too expensive now, and nobody outside of industrial customers are even buying it. I mean, I don't know what planet these people are on, but the Pi 5 has been sold exclusively to individuals for the past few months, and even every batch sells out quickly. But my estimates were almost around 500,000 Pi 5 sold already. And judging by people's posts on social media, it's not just faceless corporations and scalpers buying them all. But yes, the Pi 5 is the most expensive Pi yet. I even wrote last week about how for desktop computing it probably doesn't make much sense, especially with low end mini PCs coming down in price. That doesn't mean that the Pi is too expensive, though. The Pi 02W is probably the absolute perfect Pi for many use cases where the Pi makes sense. That is, when you need more compute than a microcontroller but less than a desktop, and you want a board that's less than $20. Yeah, the Pi 5 is probably a lot more power hungry than the other ones. I think the microcontroller route is great if you need something that runs off like a battery. But for a desktop replacement, yeah, I don't think it's that great. Which does put the Pi 5 in a weird spot where I think the compute module makes the most sense because you're slotting it into a board that's already plugged into the wall, plugged into everything else it needs. That's probably the one that makes the most sense. So the CM4 and CM5 are best for the industrial use cases at that point, usually. There are a lot of third party boards as well, but it's just interesting. CM4 is still selling out all the time since so many projects use it. Now, there's a nugget of truth in the accusation that Raspberry Pi sold out hobbyists and makers. They do have some responsibility there, and I think for a lot of us, myself included, it's meant spending a lot more time trying out other boards. Last year, I spent a fair bit of time on the Rock 5B and the Orange Pi 5, and I did a whole video testing the compute module for clones. But Raspberry Pi is still in a much better position, even if you're just an individual maker and everything you had to wait, and even if you had to wait to buy one. They have the best, I mean, they have the software and the hardware integration both figured out, and they work really well together, and they're kind of the standard. I mean, a lot of these other boards run the same software. They endeavor to be the same as the Pi. So there's something to be said when you buy one. It's like the Apple experience. It works. It just works better that way. And if you're building a project, the last thing you want to be doing is probably fiddling around with software that doesn't work. So I I think a lot of people go and buy the Pi for that reason because the drivers are all taken care of. All of it's taken care of. It just works. Um, does that mean I think the Raspberry Pi will always be king? No, they might, but I keep asking why have none of the other companies focused on things that matter in the long term, like good support for a board, even a couple years after the release? Heck, Raspberry Pi OS is still supported on the original Pi more than a decade later, which is amazing to support a Linux distribution for that long. That's pretty cool. So my Pi that sits in the back of my computer, I need to pull it out. My original Pi will still work, and that's awesome. But what kind of support, or that kind of support earns loyalty, and a community support like what Armbian does for some boards is awesome. It just doesn't mean the same thing. Another thing I see is the refrain that Raspberry Pi was once open source, but now they're not, or that open source nature was their only competitive advantage. First of all, they were never open source. At least the hardware, they couldn't be because they're licensing from ARM. Um, they do have a more open nature to them, but you can't just grab their RPi 2040 design and fab your own chip. And don't get me started on Broadcom's chips. Broadcom's chips are like Broadcom is one of those patent troll companies, which makes I don't want to get into it too far, but that's what makes me worried about VMware and Broadcom. I think long term things go to Broadcom to die, kind of similar to Oracle. But anyway, I don't begrudge hardware manufacturers, and I would love to see more true open source hardware. But even if you love Rockchip and ESP32 devices, you have to realize that all these hardware manufacturers have proprietary bits somewhere in their stack. The more open, the better, but I won't hold my breath and wait for 100% open source hardware rolling out to a competitive single board computer design. I think RISC-V is the best bet at us getting a fully open source solution, but we're not there yet. Not even close. Um, so summary. So a Raspberry Pi IPO, I'm disappointed but not surprised. And there's always the possibility more money and public markets make things better. But that'd be a pretty optimistic take and would be counter to all my instincts seeing other IPOs over the years. I don't think this changes anything in the short term, and the IPO would definitely change the character of Raspberry Pi. But there's still some hope. It doesn't ultimately kill off things we love about the Pi. And heck, it just extends the opportunity for any of Raspberry Pi's competition to do better. I'm still waiting for a true Raspberry Pi killer, but until then, I'm happy using the Pi in my projects. I I agree. I think there are pluses and minuses to this. The IPO thing is a lot more cash to be pushed into the company to make more innovations. And that's what stocks are supposed to be for. Stocks are supposed to fund R&D divisions basically entirely. Like you're supposed to buy stock in a company to invest in their R&D, and then that company uses that money to start building bigger, better, greater things. And then that by extension increases profit because they're offering a better product. That is the ideal. That's the utopia view or whatever. But I've seen so many companies go IPO, or they start like the press messages coming from Raspberry Pi are going to change if they IPO. They're not going to be as transparent about everything if they come forward and do this. Employees aren't going to be allowed to say things anymore because it's going to violate the IPO laws, or the stockholder laws, and the publicly traded company laws rather. um I think it's going to make that brand worse. I think it's going to be an influx for the technology division, and I think if they're true to their vision, the technology side of it, the engineering side of it will be good and will progress, but the public image will change. And I think that's where they're going to need to be careful. And one of these other companies could swoop in, especially if it's RISC-V based. If there's a fully RISC-V open source based competitor where everything is open, you can go hack on your own processor and then print out your own board and send it to a fab or whatever. um I I think that's going to be their downfall. And because of the IPO, I think they're going to be forced to hold on to intellectual property even more. I think they're going to have to in order to try to gain that competitive advantage. And I think they're going to be unable to do so. So I think if I had to bet, if I had to bet money, I think this is the first nail in the coffin, so to speak. I don't think they're quite, well, maybe not nail in the coffin. Maybe that's a little too far. I don't think they're dead yet, but I think they're going to have some challenges to overcome. And I think it's a distinct possibility that this changes the narrative over the next 10 years and the company loses their way. I think it happens a lot with IPOs, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope to be buying pies into the future, and I hope they're good and they just keep getting better and better. That's my hope. So, if you like the video, press the like button, hit the subscribe button for more videos like this. We record these starting 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time over on my Twitch channel, Twitch TV/MPsych. If you want to see my other videos, check out the channel. Everybody have a good evening.